Hi, and welcome to today's webinar on managing weeds after bushfire. I'm Jodie Rizet-O'Brien, and I'm part of the Sheep Connect team. Sheep Connect is supported by Australian Wool Innovation, the South Australian Sheep Industry Fund, Primary Industries and Region South Australia. And today's webinar is also supported by the South Australian Murray-Darling Basin and Adelaide Mount Lofty Ranges Natural Resources Management Boards through funding from the Australian Government's National Landcare Program and NRM levies. For more information about Sheep Connect, you can go to our website, sheepconnectsa.com.au, or you can follow us on Twitter. So our presenters today are Michaela and Shannon. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Jodie. My name's Shannon Robertson, Purses Facilitator for newly established weeds, funded by the Australian Government's Agricultural Competitiveness White Paper.
And I'm Michaela Heinson, Principal Biosecurity Officer for Weeds in the Invasive Species Unit in Biosecurity SA.
There are many important activities occurring during recovery following fire. By including weed management as part of recovery operations, we have the opportunity to prevent long-lasting negative economic implications for your property. By preventing weed spread and preventing weed invasion immediately following fire, we avoid having to manage weeds when they are widespread, reducing the cost and effort required. Today, we are going to discuss how fire leaves your farm open to invasion by weeds, how fire can stimulate weed germination, how to deal with weed seeds in hay, the potential for weeds to enter your property during restocking, and support options available. Weeds are often early colonizing plant species that require disturbance to establish. The bare ground left after fire favors this life history strategy. Weed seeds germinating after fire have a far greater chance of success with the lack of competition and the increased resources available. Weed seeds may also enter your property with wind or with animals, and again have a greater chance of successfully establishing. The bare ground left after fire can also reduce water infiltration, and with a decent rain event, a watershed could wash weed seeds down slopes into watercourses, furthering their spread. It is also possible that firefighting operations could have spread weed seeds, so new weeds may have been introduced to your property. The key management activity here is to diligently monitor emerging plants after fire and promptly identify suspicious plants and control them as necessary. Fire will often cause seeds of both weeds and favourable plants to germinate. After fire, there can be mass germination of weed seeds. This offers an opportunity to reduce the weed seed bank by controlling weeds before they reach maturity. Controlling these plants early will have a lasting positive effect on your farm's weed situation. Alternatively, neglecting to control emerging weeds and allowing them to set seed will greatly increase some seeds in the seed bank, making the problem much worse in the long term. With emergency management operations providing stock with much needed fodder, many tons of hay has been moved around the landscape. In these critical times, we are often less concerned about the weed status of the properties that hay was cut from, and records of the hay's origin may not exist. It is important to maintain any records that do exist, and most important, keeping records of where hay was fed out. These records will allow you to diligently monitor feeding paddocks for subsequent years for suspicious plants, and have them promptly identified and controlled as necessary. When the time comes to restock your farm, maintain your farm biosecurity practices of keeping stock in holding paddocks for long enough for them to pass weed seeds through their system. This will help contain any imported weed seeds to the holding paddock and enable you to monitor for weed emergence. Additionally, check newly acquired stock for weed seeds in fleece, or where possible, purchase shorn sheep.
It's important to map sites for monitoring on your farm, but this doesn't need to be complex. Use whatever format suits you. Paper copies are fine, or digital mapping tools that you're comfortable with. Concentrate on where hay was fed out and those high traffic areas where the machinery and equipment has been moving through areas in your farm where there's risk. It's important to consider weed dormancy. So think about how long you'll need to do your monitoring. It could be multiple years. It might take a few years until conditions for germination are right. Take a specimen and photos of any new plants that you find. If you've got enough information to fill out this table here of key information, it's important to record this and to get the advice you need for identification. Think about the locality, recording that, the place name, GPS coordinates, the landscape or the habitat you've found the plant in, how many plants are there, the habit, whether it's looking like a grass or a herb or a shrub, if there are flowers on the plant, some details around the flowers, similarly for fruits, your name and the date. It is best to take specimens with flowers on if you can, and you can press plants between sheets of newspaper with something heavy on top to then take your pressed plants to an expert. Photos are good. Having a photo and specimens are even better. Local agronomists and NRM officers in your area can provide advice on weed identification and control options. Some plants really are difficult to identify, so it's always best to seek advice early when you suspect a new weed is growing on your property. Staff in natural resources centres around the state are there to help, and you can see on screen here that there are some numbers here of local natural resources centres and where you can contact an NRM officer to provide help. Also, there's support available at the state herbarium. Chris Brodie is a dedicated weed botanist at the Herbarium, and he's the point of contact for anyone with a suspected new weed species that requires confirmation or identification. His details are on the screen. When thinking about how to tackle weed management post-bushfire, normally an integrated approach is important to reduce the extent of weeds and to reduce the weed seed bank in the soil that you can't necessarily see. Integrated weed management often requires the use of several weed management techniques, such as physical control options, chemical control, and biological control where biological control agents are available. It's important to remember the option of biological control after fire because it might require distributing biological control agents from areas that haven't been burnt back into areas where they haven't been able to persist because of the impact of the fire. Importantly, pasture improvement and revegetation are quite important components to be working, with hand in hand in integrated weed management. Success is far more likely if you can integrate multiple weed control methods and think about what you're aiming for in your pasture improvement and revegetation. So for more information, the PIRSA website is available. Once you're on the PIRSA website, you could just type in weeds or use this link on the screen here. And Shannon, who you've heard from today with myself, is available to provide assistance for weed identification and control advice, and to connect you up with someone close to you as well if you need someone to give you a hand in identifying weeds in the field.
Thanks Shannon and Michaela for joining us for our Sheep Connect SA webinar today. I'd like to thank the supporters of Sheep Connect and also our supporters of today's webinar with the South Australian Murray-Darling Basin and Adelaide Mount Lofty Ranges Natural Resources Management Boards, with their funding from the Australian Government's National Landcare Program and NRM levies, and of course AWI, Primary Industries and Region South Australia, and the SA Sheep Industry Fund. Thank you and enjoy your day.